Welcome to my 49 Willys pickup project. This is part 3 of a series. In the first series I brought it home. The second series was all focused around getting it running. As part of that, pulled the front clip and got it running and driving, and we had a little extra time so we popped the box off as well. So what's left now here is the cab. I know it runs good, so I can continue on here. This episode is all going to be focused on getting that cab off. And there may be more work if we get a little further along the way, but that's where we're starting on this one. Got my friend Guy back for another day of work. So let's get started. I like to start every episode covering the work that I've done between episodes. So let's jump right in here. If you were watching close, even on the last episode when we got this thing running, you would notice that this is not the carburetor that I rebuilt. I went through that twice and I couldn't get it to run without a lot of choke. Let me show you why. Getting close. There's just a lot of play you can see in that throttle shaft, so that needs to be rebushed. So rather than screwing around with that, I went to a Solex carb, and these have gotten a lot of good reviews, and so I thought I'd give it a try, and this thing worked great. It just popped off on the first try, no adjustment. So we're just going to run that one for now. I pulled my temporary radiator back off, and I've also removed the exhaust manifold and the exhaust pipe and muffler, so that's out of the way. You probably notice a lot less wiring here too. I cut away pretty much all of the wiring. This thing's going to get rewired, so we don't need any of that. We'll jump inside. I have pulled the dash apart, so the instrument panel is out, all of the switches, and I pulled the seat out too. So that's about it. With that, we're ready to get started on tearing this thing apart now to get that cab off. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff we have to do before we can pull that cab off. We'll start by pulling this off. We can take the battery tray back out, set that aside for now. We've got hoses for the heater core. Those have to come apart. We'll get those out of the way. We've got to pull some throttle linkage. Next thing we'll be doing is taking the steering column out. So we're going to end up removing the steering gear down here. And to make it easy, I think we'll also take the steering wheel off. Then we need to remove the transmission shifter and the transfer case shifters. And I think that should do it. We should be ready to go after that. We're going to try to use the engine hoist to lift the cab off of the frame. So I made up a little contraption here. It's basically bolted right to my boom, and then I've got a couple of 2x6s that are pretty well attached to this. So this will slide right on through the cab, and then we'll lift up on it. If that doesn't work, then we'll grab the Bobcat and try it with that. When this cab comes off, it needs to go on a dolly. I want to be able to roll it around both in the garage and out into the driveway so I can take it outside for some of the dirtier jobs that need to be done. So what I'm going to do is build a cradle, and then on the bottom of that cradle I'm going to weld up some dollies. I've got nice big 8-inch tires so I can roll this out onto the gravel without any trouble. And in order to make this all work, the first thing I have to do is square up my base. And squaring it up doesn't mean it's 90 degrees because the cab is narrower in the front than it is in the back. So what I did to get this all measured up is I just hung some nuts from each of the 4 cab mounts so I know where they're going to be. And then I just took some scrap angle iron and laid it out. So now what I'll do, I'll begin by just tacking this all together. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how I want to finish it out. This is my dolly all ready to go. Now the way it's going to work is this will roll up underneath here. So it'll go under the cab something like that when it comes off. There's one more thing I'll be doing. I made up these blocks, and these blocks will basically bolt through the body mounts because I need to have it elevated about 6 inches above the front and 5 inches above the back. And I'm not going to weld these in though until I have the cab off and suspended. Then what I'll do is I'll bolt these up underneath onto the cab. Then I'll lower the cab down onto this and then weld these in. That way I don't have to worry about trying to get those aligned perfectly. And then I can move this thing anywhere I want. So this one was, the only thing I spent money on was these wheels. And they were about 15 bucks each. And the rest of it was just scrap that I've had laying around. I apologize for the lack of video footage of the entire process. We got the important stuff down, but left out a lot. We got a really fast start, and then my toolboxes just exploded into the pole barn. We started with the steering column, so we got the wheel off, really no problem there. That went really easy. But when we got to pulling the pitman arm so we could pull the column out, that was a different story. We really struggled with that one. And in the end, we did win, but that was a battle, an epic battle all the way. And that's about the time we really broke down and put the camera aside. As usual, things went a lot faster than I expected once we took care of that steering column. So as usual, guy wanted to do a little more work, so we moved on and started looking at the transmission. Now earlier I didn't mention, but this transmission wouldn't go into second or third. We got reverse and first just fine, but it was just stuck when you slid it over to go into second or third. And we got a good look at that before we took the cab off, because we pulled the shifter off and we could see the synchros were stuck. So before we pulled this out, we actually drained the oil out of it, and as you can see, we got a lot of water out first, so there's some rust in there. I think what we're going to do is tear this down, inspect the bearings, replace what needs to be replaced, and get it cleaned up, sealed up, and then we'll be able to put that back in. We also pulled the frame outside and power washed it, which is remarkable considering it was done at the end of January in Minnesota, but we've had a heat wave going. We had sunshine and temperatures above 40, so I was able to turn on the outside water, get the power washer out, and we just cleaned all the gunk out as much as we could get. And for a couple of reasons. One is just to be able to get at the engine and the transmission and have it be a little bit cleaner as we went. But the other reason was to get a better look at the situation with the frame. And as you can see on both sides, right here at the bottom of the bend, we've got rust through. So I'll have to fix that. We can look on the other side. You can see it there. And it's right where that extra little boxing piece was in there, and so you know that would have been holding all of the dirt and moisture in, so that's why it looks the way it does, but it's going to have to be repaired. Okay, that's about it for this episode. I've got lots of parts and pieces laying all over the place that I need to get organized. So I'll be doing that in the next few days, as well as digging in and taking a little closer look at the cab now that it's off the chassis. And next time, I think what we'll do is dig into that transmission and transfer case and get started on the frame repair. So if you want to follow along, just hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.